The 20s had been so prosperous in so many places, not in the countryside. The farming industry was in very bad shape in the 1920s. But certainly in the cities, it was very prosperous. People were making fortunes on the stock market. And then all of a sudden, poof, it went. I mean, people, economists, very serious economists, had been saying that we'd reached a new level, a new plateau of prosperity in this country, and we were never going to go back. And then the crash happened.
All through the summer of 1929, there had been ominous rumblings. For months, unemployment had been rising. Automobile sales and department store revenues had fallen off sharply. Across the South and West, farms were failing in record numbers. And still on Wall Street, the delirious optimism continued, undimmed. On August 27, 1929, the Dow Jones average reached its all-time peak as an army of frenzied buyers descended on New York, desperate not to miss a single day's trading, swamping the hotels, camping out on the street in front of the stock exchange, and in the tiny graveyard of Trinity Church on Broadway, where Alexander Hamilton lay buried. As summer turned to fall, the mood changed. As the stock market dipped, then rose, then lurched downwards again, investors grew increasingly uneasy. In September, an economist named Roger Babson sent a wave of fear rippling through Wall Street when he warned that sooner or later, a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. But most experts brushed away any concerns. Stock prices, one man declared, have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. And then the bottom fell out. On Wednesday, October 23rd, 1929, the first waves of panicky selling began to drive down the price of blue-chip stocks, like Westinghouse and General Electric. The following morning, the fear turned to panic, and brokers began unloading margin accounts at record speed. In less than 2 hours, nearly $10 billion invested in stocks was simply wiped out. Outside on the street, crowds massed 6 deep in front of the stock exchange, while hundreds more stood in shocked silence on the steps of Federal Hall. Newspapers would later try to describe the uncanny murmuring sound that echoed off the stone facades of the financial district that morning. It was a collective moan of horror and grief, and stunned disbelief, rising up from thousands of ruined, frightened men. The biggest crowds gathered outside the house of Morgan, desperately hoping for a miracle. Hour after hour, the market continued its descent into chaos and pandemonium, as stock prices simply collapsed under the torrent of panicked selling, and desperate brokers fought and screamed and trampled one another to get out. In the worst single day in the history of the New York Stock Exchange, the market lost $14 billion in value, bringing the week's loss to more than $30 billion, 10 times more than the entire annual budget of the federal government, and far more than the United States had spent during all of World War I. Worst hit in the short run were the thousands of small investors who, believing that everyone could be rich, had bought stock on margin, sometimes borrowing as much as 90% of its book value. In a matter of hours, in some cases minutes, they had lost everything: their life savings, their houses, and their dreams.